Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Today's question was suggested by a viewer. Amy attacks with Firebending student. Does the X in Firebending X get locked in when this ability goes on the stack, or when it resolves? Alright, the first question that we'll address is whether this is even a question at all. If you've been a fan of the channel for a while now, you might already know that mana abilities do not use the stack. They just resolve immediately. If Firebending counted as a mana ability, it wouldn't matter whether it checked Firebending student's power when the ability goes on the stack or when the ability resolved, since there'd be no way for it to change. Based on the way that I phrased that last sentence, though, you might have already guessed what's coming up next. While there definitely are such things as triggered mana abilities, Firebending is not one of them, because the trigger event does not match the description given in this rule here, which I'll summarize as saying that it needs to trigger from an activated mana ability or from mana otherwise being added to your mana pool. If you'd like a more in-depth discussion on this topic, check out my video on Crime Novelist and Tashana's Tidebinder. Alright, so we've established that this definitely is not a mana ability, which is great news for the question being relevant. So now let's answer the question. If you've been a fan of the channel for a while, another thing that you might already know is that one of the steps in casting a spell or putting a triggered ability on the stack is to choose a value for X. But that's not required for the Firebending X ability because the text of Firebending student's ability defines a value for X already. If the game needs to know any information about any game objects to apply an effect, it will check that information as the effect is applied. Therefore, the X is set as the Firebending ability resolves. One consequence of this is that it's possible to respond to the trigger by increasing Firebending student's power to get more mana. You could do this by playing a pump spell or indeed any instant because the Firebending student's prowess ability will resolve before the Firebending trigger if you cast that instant in response to it. Let's say that your opponent isn't a fan of you getting all that mana, and they cast a removal spell against the Firebending student, killing it before the Firebending trigger resolves. Do you still get any mana? Well, since we're saying they killed the Firebending student in response to the trigger, that means the Firebending X trigger is already on the stack. Once on the stack, a triggered ability exists independently from its source, meaning that it will resolve even if the source is removed. Since Firebending student will not be in the zone that the game expects it to be in when that ability resolves, the game will use its last known information from that permanent, checking the power the last time Firebending student was on the battlefield. This means that the answer depends on what removal spell your opponent used. If it was a Doomblade or a Lightning Bolt or something like that, that wouldn't affect how much mana you get at all. Although note that if they killed it in response to a prowess trigger, that prowess trigger would not affect how much mana you get either, since it can't retroactively give Firebending student more power after the creature dies. If your opponent used a -X spell like Tragic Slip, that would affect the Firebending student's power, so you would probably be getting 0 mana in that case. No, it's not possible for a Firebending X ability to end up taking mana away from your mana pool. That's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again next time for another daily ruling. Until then, I hope you have a great day.